funeral, a betrayal. Another woman claims my husband's legacy. My son calls her family. She is not. He promised her everything. I will have my vengeance. He was my husband. She will lose it all. The courtroom is my battlefield. The truth will be revealed. The real will surfaces. Who will inherit the darkness? Sometimes the truth is buried deeper than the grave. Prepare for a story of betrayal, inheritance, and a mother's fight for her legacy. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. The will reading was a somber affair, held in the sterile conference room of Mr. Abernathy's law firm. I, Mireille Dubois, sat rigidly, my hands clenched tightly in my lap, trying to ignore the smug expression plastered across Yvette's face. She had been brazen enough to wear a cream-colored. Daniel, my son, stood beside her, his arm protectively around her shoulders. A silent betrayal that pierced me more deeply than any words could. Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping across the room before settling on me, a flicker of sympathy in his. He began to read the will, the familiar legal jargon washing over me until he reached the crucial part, the disposition of Laurent's assets. The initial will, the one Mr. Abernathy read first, seemed designed to shatter my world. Laurent had left Yvette the house, the apartment downtown, and a substantial monthly allowance. To me, he bequeathed only a small fraction of his estate, barely enough to cover my living expenses. I could feel the blood drain from my face, the room spinning as Yvette's triumphant smile widened. Daniel squeezed her hand, his, "I don't understand," I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper. Mr. Abernathy looked at me apologetically. "These are Mr. Dubois' explicit instructions. Mrs. Dubois." I felt like a stranger in my own life, a ghost haunting the edges of a reality that no longer belonged to me. As Yvette began to bask in her victory, a wave of cold fury washed over me, replacing the shock and despair. I wouldn't let her win, wouldn't let her erase my years of love and loyalty. "There's another will," I announced, my voice trembling but firm. All heads swiveled in my direction, surprise evident on every face, especially Yvette's. I reached into my handbag, pulling out a sealed envelope. The original will Laurent had drafted years ago, before Yvette had sunk her claws into him. I handed it to Mr. Abernathy, who examined it with a mixture of confusion and intrigue. "This is unprecedented, Mrs. Dubois," he stammered, breaking the seal with hesitant fingers. The room fell silent as he began to read the second will, its contents about to rewrite all our lives. The second will was clear. I was the sole inheritor of Laurent's estate, the house, the businesses, everything. Yvette's face crumpled, her perfect facade dissolving into a mask of rage and betrayal. Daniel looked back and forth between us, his expression unreadable. Mr. Abernathy confirmed the validity of the document, stating that it superseded the previous one. But that's not possible," Yvette shrieked, her voice laced with venom. "He loved me. He promised me everything." I stood up, my gaze locking onto hers. "He may have promised you things," I said, my voice cold and steady, "but he was my husband, and this will proves it." However, the look in Daniel's... The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, Yvette dressed in a stark. Mr. Abernathy adjusted his glasses, a nervous tic betraying his usual composure. Daniel sat between us, a physical representation of the impossible choice he faced. The judge entered, and a hush fell over the room. It was time. My hands trembled as I clutched the second will, its paper worn but its message resolute. This was it, the moment to reclaim my life, my husband's legacy, and my son's heart. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Yvette had a plan, something she was holding back. Mr. Abernathy presented the second will to the court, his voice echoing through the silent room. He meticulously outlined the details, emphasizing the date and Laurent's signature. Yvette watched him, her expression unreadable, a dangerous glint in her. When Mr. Abernathy finished, the judge turned to Yvette, inviting her to present her case. "Your Honor," she began, her voice dripping with sincerity, "I loved Laurent deeply. He promised me a life together, a future. This second will, it's simply not possible. He would never betray me like that." She dabbed at her Daniel. Then it happened. Yvette's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman with an air of calculated confidence, approached the bench. "Your Honor, we have evidence to suggest that the second will is a forgery," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. My heart pounded in my chest. I stared at Yvette, disbelief warring with a rising tide of fury. "That's a lie!" I exclaimed, my voice shaking. "Laurent signed that will himself." Yvette smirked, a triumphant glint in her. "We have handwriting experts who will testify that the signature on the second will is inconsistent with Laurent's known signature," her lawyer stated, producing a stack of documents. Daniel shifted uneasily beside Yvette, the doubt in his gaze cut me deeper than any accusation. Mr. Abernathy looked stunned, whispering urgently to me, "We need to call our own expert, Mrs. Dubois. This could be disastrous." I nodded, my mind racing. How could Yvette have anticipated this? Had she been planning this all along? "Your Honor," I said, trying to regain my composure, "we request a recess to gather our own evidence." The judge considered my request, his expression impassive. "Very well," he announced, banging his gavel. "Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning." As I walked out of the courtroom, defeated and reeling, I saw Yvette whisper something to Daniel. He nodded, then turned and followed her, leaving me standing alone in the crowded hallway, the weight of Laurent's legacy crushing me. The air in Laurent's old study was thick with dust and memories, a silent testament to a life abruptly ended. I, Mireille, ran my fingers over the worn leather of his desk, a knot of desperation tightening in my stomach. Yvette's accusation of forgery echoed in my mind, pushing me to search every drawer, every forgotten file, for anything that could prove the second will's authenticity. I knew Laurent, knew he wouldn't leave me defenseless, but the proof remained elusive. Just as I was about to give up, a small, unmarked box caught my eye, tucked away behind a stack of old ledgers. My heart pounded as I reached for it, hoping it held the key to my redemption. As my fingers brushed against the cool metal, the door creaked open, and Daniel stood there, his face etched with a complex mix of concern and lingering doubt. "Mom," he began, his voice hesitant, "what are you doing?" The small office of Dr. Anya Sharma, a renowned handwriting expert, felt like a sanctuary of logic after the emotional turmoil of the courtroom. I watched, my breath held, as Dr. Sharma meticulously examined Laurent's signature on both wills, her magnifying glass glinting under the harsh desk lamp. "The inconsistencies Yvette's lawyer cited are minor," she stated, her voice calm and authoritative. "Common variations in a person's signature over time, especially under duress or illness." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a new fear. "Can you prove it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Dr. Sharma looked up, her gaze steady. "I can certainly present a compelling case. Mrs. Dubois will need samples of Laurent's signature from various periods to show the natural evolution, but I am confident." It was a glimmer of hope, a fragile lifeline in the stormy sea of legal battles. Later that evening, I found Daniel alone in the kitchen, staring blankly at his phone. The air between us was thick with unspoken words and unresolved hurt. "Daniel, we need to talk," I said, my voice softer than I intended, trying to bridge the chasm that had formed between us. He flinched, then slowly put his phone down. "Mom, I don't know what to believe anymore," he confessed, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Yvette says you're trying to take everything from her, that Laurent loved her more." My heart ached at his naivety, at the way Yvette had twisted his perception. "She's lying, son. Your father loved us. The second will, it proves that. He wouldn't have left us destitute." I reached for his hand, my touch gentle. "You know your father, Daniel. You know his heart. Don't let her manipulate you into doubting what's true." He pulled his hand away, his gaze distant. I wish Dad was here to tell me himself." The courtroom felt colder, more oppressive the next morning. I watched as Dr. Sharma, calm and composed, presented her findings, systematically dismantling Yvette's forgery claims. Her testimony was precise, her explanations clear, painting a picture of Laurent's evolving signature over years, making Yvette's lawyer squirm. A flicker of triumph ignited within me as Yvette's smug expression finally faltered. Daniel, seated beside Yvette, glanced at me, a glimmer of recognition in his. Just as Dr. Sharma concluded, and it seemed victory was within reach, Yvette's lawyer rose, a sinister smile playing on her lips. "Your Honor," she announced, her voice cutting through the hushed room. "We have one final piece of evidence, a sworn affidavit from a former business partner of the deceased, detailing a history of Laurent Dubois fabricating documents for financial gain, including other wills." My blood ran cold, the words hitting me like a physical blow. The room erupted in gasps, and I stared at Yvette, her triumphant smirk now fully restored, the battle far from over. The affidavit hung over us like a shroud. This new accusation threatened to unravel everything, casting doubt not only on the will, but on Laurent's entire character. I glanced at Daniel, his face a mask of confusion and betrayal. He looked at Yvette, then back at me. Mr. Abernathy, usually so composed, was visibly shaken, muttering about the need for further investigation. The courtroom buzzed with speculation, the atmosphere thick with distrust. I felt a wave of nausea, the weight of Laurent's secrets threatening to suffocate me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about his legacy, about the man I thought I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, Laurent's face haunting my dreams. Was he really capable of such deceit? Had I been living a lie all these years? The doubt gnawed at me, eroding my confidence and fueling my fear. I got out of bed and wandered into the living room, drawn to the framed photo of Laurent on the mantelpiece. He was smiling, I picked up the photo, tracing the lines of his face with my finger, desperately searching for a sign, a clue, anything that could confirm or deny the accusations against him. "Tell me what to do, Laurent," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Tell me the truth." The next morning, I decided to confront Yvette. I needed to know the truth, straight from her mouth. I found her at Laurent's favorite cafe, sipping coffee and looking infuriatingly composed. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and steely. Yvette looked up, a flicker of surprise in her. "About what, Mireille?" "Your impending defeat?" "About Laurent," I retorted. "About the lies you've been spreading. What did you promise this business partner to get him to lie under oath?" Yvette laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. "Promises are easily made, especially when money is involved. Laurent always had a knack for bending the truth to... You should know that better than anyone." "He was a good man," I insisted, my voice trembling with anger and grief. "He loved me, he loved Daniel. You were just a passing infatuation, a distraction." Yvette leaned forward, "Oh, darling, you're so naive. Laurent never loved you. He pitied you. I was the one who understood him, who truly saw him for who he was. And now I'm going to get what I deserve." As she spoke, Daniel walked into the cafe, his face pale and drawn. He overheard everything, the venom in Yvette's voice, the pain in mine. He stood frozen, caught between two worlds, the weight of his father's secrets crushing him. Yvette saw him, a predatory glint in her eye. "Daniel," she cooed, her voice dripping with false concern. "Are you all right, darling? Your mother is saying such awful things." Daniel looked at me, then at Yvette, his face etched with a decision. I need to think," he stammered, before turning and fleeing the cafe, leaving us both in stunned silence. The expression in his... Daniel walked aimlessly through the city park, the biting wind mirroring the turmoil in his soul. His mother's heartbroken voice, Yvette's cruel laughter, they echoed relentlessly in his mind, a discordant symphony of betrayal. He slumped onto a cold bench, running a hand through his... Every word Yvette had spoken, every insinuation about Laurent's character, chipped away at the image of the loving, honorable man he thought he knew. He felt caught in a brutal tug of war, his loyalty to his mother warring with the seductive narrative Yvette spun, a narrative that painted Mireille as the aggressor. He knew he couldn't stay silent anymore, couldn't remain a pawn in their bitter game. He had to make a choice, not just for himself, but for his father's memory and the truth he so desperately sought. The weight of it all pressed down on him, a suffocating blanket of confusion and grief. Back in her quiet home, Mireille sat in Laurent's study, a room now filled with an unsettling silence. Yvette's venomous words to Daniel had pierced her, not just for herself, but for the son she saw being manipulated. She sifted through old photo albums, letters, anything that could remind her of the Laurent she knew, the man who couldn't possibly be the deceiver Yvette claimed. Her fingers brushed against a faded photograph, one taken years ago on their anniversary, Laurent beaming, holding a small, intricately carved wooden bird. A forgotten memory surfaced. Laurent had always kept a detailed journal of his personal thoughts and creative projects, a habit he'd started after a difficult period in his early career, long before Yvette entered their lives. He often mentioned the small bird as a symbol of their enduring love and a reminder of his integrity. Could that journal hold the truth about his character? A personal testament to contradict Yvette's manufactured lies? Her heart quickened with a renewed, desperate hope. Meanwhile, Yvette met with Mr. Henderson, the former business partner, in a secluded booth at a fashionable but discreet restaurant. She exuded an air of triumph, believing she had Mireille cornered. The affidavit worked beautifully, didn't it? She purred, taking a sip of her expensive champagne. Mireille won't know what hit her. Laurent's reputation, everything, will be in tatters. Henderson, a man with weary... He was always good at playing the game, Laurent, he mused, a hint of bitterness in his voice. But sometimes the game plays you. Yvette laughed, a brittle, self-assured sound. Not this time. This time I've got all the cards. She leaned in conspiratorially, oblivious to the young waiter discreetly wiping the adjacent table, too close for comfort. And soon, I'll have everything Laurent promised me, and Mireille will be left with absolutely nothing. The next morning, the courtroom felt charged, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Mireille, having located Laurent's old journal hidden beneath a loose floorboard in his study, clutched it tight, a final bastion of hope. She presented it to Mr. Abernathy, As the proceedings resumed, Daniel walked back into the courtroom, his posture straighter, his gaze resolute, not towards Yvette, but directly at Mireille. He sat down beside her, a silent yet powerful gesture of reconciliation. Yvette, upon seeing Daniel, flashed a triumphant smile, believing she had finally cemented her hold. However, her smile faltered. Abernathy, with Daniel's unwavering support, rose to address the judge, holding up Laurent's journal. "Your Honor," he began, his voice clear and firm, "we have here a personal journal belonging to the deceased, Laurent Dubois, which we believe contains entries directly relevant to the accusations against his character and, more importantly, a testament to his true intentions regarding his final will." Yvette shot to her feet, her face contorted in a mixture of fear and fury, realizing with dawning horror that her carefully constructed narrative was about to collapse. Mr. Abernathy, his voice resonating with newfound conviction, presented Laurent's journal to the judge, his dark gray. Yvette's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in a tailored... However, the judge, a stern but fair woman, silenced her with a firm gesture, her gaze fixed on the worn leather-bound book. Mireille in her tailored navy. Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat, opening the journal to a marked page. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted palpably, from one of aggressive defense to a hushed anticipation. This was the moment of truth, the final battle for Laurent's legacy and his true character. Yvette, in her stark cream-colored E-weight of impending revelation. The judge nodded, granting permission for the journal's contents to be read aloud, a decision that sealed Yvette's fate. Daniel leaned closer to his mother. His Mr. Abernathy's voice filled the silent courtroom, reading excerpts from Laurent's journal that detailed his profound regret over his affair with Yvette. "My love for Mireille and Daniel is the bedrock of my existence," he read, Laurent's elegant handwriting projected onto a screen for all to see. "My indiscretion with Yvette was a moment of weakness, a lapse I deeply, painfully regret." The journal entries continued, revealing Laurent's careful planning to secure Mireille and Daniel's future, explicitly mentioning his intention to leave everything to Mireille in a newer, updated will. He also detailed a falling out with Mr. Henderson, the former business partner, accusing him of dubious financial dealings years ago, thereby discrediting the earlier affidavit. Mireille listened, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks, not of sorrow, but of profound understanding and vindication. Daniel squeezed her hand again, his gaze unwavering, a silent apology and reaffirmation of their bond. Yvette, now pale and defeated in her cream-colored, the truth, finally brought to light through Laurent's own words, painted a clear picture of a man who, despite his flaws, ultimately sought to protect his true family. Each word read aloud chipped away at Yvette's fabricated narrative, leaving her exposed and powerless. As Mr. Abernathy concluded the reading, Yvette, her face contorted in a final desperate fury, sprang to her feet. "This journal is a fabrication. Another one of Mireille's lies," she shrieked, pointing an accusatory finger across the courtroom. Her lawyer, though clearly sensing defeat, made a half-hearted attempt to support her, citing the journal's sudden appearance. However, the judge, having patiently listened to the overwhelming evidence, including Dr. Sharma's previous testimony on Laurent's handwriting variations, slammed her gavel with authoritative finality. "Enough," the judge commanded, her voice cutting through Yvette's outburst. "The court finds the journal to be authentic and its contents compelling. The second will, dated 5 years ago, is hereby declared valid and supersedes all prior documents. Mireille Dubois is the sole and rightful inheritor of Laurent Dubois' estate." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom, followed by a wave of quiet murmurs. Mireille closed her lie-lifting. Daniel, tears in his own a new beginning. Yvette collapsed back into her chair, utterly defeated, her reign of deception brought to an abrupt and undeniable end. The courtroom doors opened, and Yvette, a shell of her former triumphant self, stormed out, her cream-colored polished floor. No one followed her, her exit as lonely as her ambitions. Mireille and Daniel stood for a moment, bathed in the quiet aftermath of their victory, the echoes of the judge's verdict still ringing in their ears. Daniel turned to his mother, "Mom, I am so sorry. For everything. For doubting you, for not seeing. I was so foolish." Mireille reached out, pulling him into a tight embrace, burying her face in his shoulder. "It's all right, my son. We were both grieving, both confused. Your father was a complex man, but he loved us. That's what truly matters." They walked out of the courtroom together, hand in hand, stepping into the bright sunlight that streamed through the courthouse doors. The world outside felt different, lighter, full of possibility. Mireille knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but with Daniel by her side, and the truth of Laurent's love finally affirmed, she was ready to face it, ready to build a new future from the ashes of the past, truly free at last. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. For more gripping dramas, remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell.